So you actually have to understand the stats before you actually choose a good weapon. And if we look at the damage here and the fire rate, we can actually calculate the TTK just using these. And I'm not saying to go out and calculate every TTK ever. I just want to show it off so you guys have a fundamental understanding of how the calculation works. And understanding that allows you to understand a whole lot more about the game. So here's how it works. In order to calculate the TTK, you need to calculate the BTK first, which is player health divided by weapon damage. If we pull up a calculator here, we can take the player health, which is at no armor, is 100. We divide that by 40, we get 2.5. Since there's no half a bullet, we need to increase it to 3. We need to round it up to 3. And now we can take this and plug it into this formula. So it would be 3 minus 1. And the reason why we minus 1, and this is like ingenious, I would have never thought of this. Thanks to Oxygen for pointing this out for me. Please make sure to check out his TTK sheet. It's linked in the description below, and send him my love. So the way he explained it to me was, this is how it looks like if you don't do the minus 1. You have the whole first part of the rate of fire being calculated when the first bullet is always instantaneous. So by removing the first bullet, you're getting rid of all this extra time right in the beginning that assumes that you have a charge up time to shoot that first bullet when there is none. So it's pretty fucking ingenious. I would have never thought of that. So you minus 1, which gives us 2. You divide that by the rate of fire, divided by 60, which just takes the rate of fire, which is calculated as rounds per minute, and turns it into rounds per second. So we would get 10.8333 repeating. I'll go ahead and do it just to show it off. So the fire rate's 650, and you divide it by 60, and you get 10.8333 repeating. So then all you have to do is take 10.833 repeating, divided by 2, or 2 divided by 10.833, and boom, there you go. There's your TTK. It's 185 because we have to round this number up. Now, if you want to calculate the amount of the TTK for like heavy armor, let's say for example, the way you would do it is you would just add the durability of the armor, and in heavy armor case, it is 47. So we just add 47 to the base player health, which is 100. We get 147, and we divide it by the formula. We just follow the formula from there. Pretty easy. Now let's talk about the other stats that are important, other than TTK and BTK. The vertical recoil and horizontal recoil is what really determines if your TTK is going to be that, because TTK is predicated upon you hitting every single shot. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. They think, oh, well, TTK, I can kill people in 0.183 seconds? That's fucking really short. This gun's OP. When you're not going to be hitting all your shots, and we'll take the FAL as an example here. Now, obviously, we don't have any attachments on it, but even with attachments, you're still going to be missing a shot. And since the fire rate is 650, which is pretty slow, you can't really afford to miss a shot. You can see that, sure, 50 meters we can hit the target, and the infamous 80-meter test is where the gun is really made or broken. You can see I hit 3, maybe 4 shots if I'm lucky. And now obviously that's with attachments. If I put on attachments, it'll work even better. And the stat that is the most important out of the two recoils is vertical, but horizontal is also important. And you want to make sure that the gun you're choosing has a horizontal recoil that's actually controllable. The 2.20 you have on the FAL is just uncontrollable. And sure, we could decrease it, but why would we want to waste our time trying to decrease a stat where on the M4 and the G36 it's already low? So let's go ahead and take the liberty of actually decreasing it. So now it's 1.98, which is still higher than vertical recoil. And then we can go ahead and slap on a flash hider, which will make the horizontal recoil even better, but make the vertical recoil even worse. So now it's down to 1.58 with a vertical recoil of 2.10, which is very, very high. If you want to use like a different attachment, like the tactical, it's not going to decrease the horizontal recoil by any meaningful amount, and no other attachment really gets it down like the flash hider does. So as you can see, the attachments are just kind of hurting the gun more than helping it. And we can go ahead here and hop in, and you can see, like, yeah, sure, it's a lot better. I can definitely hit my shots, but the vertical recoil is very, very hard to control, and that's why it is the most important stat. You want to focus all your attachments towards that. And not only that, but we're going to talk about mag capacity in a second. You can see, wow, I think that's just me this time, but let's just wait for this target to pass. You can see 3, 4, 5 shots maximum. It's quite hard to control. And now, we can also look at the velocity, which is quite important. That's just how fast your bullets go. Honestly, it's not an insanely important stat since you're going to be aiming a little bit ahead anyways. Accuracy is another good stat to look at. The lower your accuracy is, the more your bullets spread out over the distance. So, even if your aim is, you know, straight on, it's still going to miss because of that bullet spread. And if we look at the M4's bullet spread, you can actually see it's not anything too great. I'm not going to tout it as the best. It's 78.81, which is accurate enough for you to hit your shots. Anything below 70, it starts to become really just unbearable. Most guns don't have that problem, so you don't have to worry about that, but anything below 70 I would start to be wary of. So let's go back over to the FAL here really quickly. So yeah, you can really see that making sure your gun has a low horizontal recoil to start off with and decreasing the vertical recoil as much as possible is the key to success, because then you'll end up having a gun that you can just point, click, and shoot with. And we'll look at the M4 as an example here. You can see this gun has no recoil at all, pretty much. You just have to pull down very slightly, and you'll be able to hit your targets pinpoint accurate. Look at how many shots I'm hitting. And this has a faster fire rate than the FAL at 700. Look at that. That's just an amazing, amazing thing. With a FAL, we're not going to be able to hit all of our shots like that. And so that's why accuracy and effective range trumps TTK most of the time. Because if you're shooting the FAL, you might as well just be shooting an M4 where you know you're going to hit every shot at 80 meters and above. Up to 150, you can pretty much accurately hit your shots if you're good enough. The FAL, no matter how good you are, you're not going to be able to hit your shots at 80 meters like you can with the M4. So, very important, very important, very important. We talked about accuracy. We talked about fire rate. Fire rate is important stat to realize. If it's slower, that means there's more time in between shots, meaning if you miss one shot, there's going to be a greater consequence than a gun with, like, the Vector, which has such a fast fire rate of 1200. If you miss one shot with the Chris Vector, it's not going to be the end of the world like it is with the FAL, or even worse, the Scar H, which has a fire rate of 500. And that's why I hate this gun. There's so many reasons why I hate this gun. The low fire rate just pisses me off. And we can actually calculate it right now. How if you miss one bullet, what's going to happen? So we'll just take like the standard TTK time. We'll calculate this right now. We'll take the standard TTK time. So 42. Rate of fire is 500. And we'll just copy this formula here. Paste it here. And we'll go ahead and remove that. Boom. 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 And now what we want to do is actually get rid of the -1 here. And look at the difference. Look at the difference. Let's actually go ahead and paste it right here. Oops. Okay. Let's go ahead and paste it right here. Get rid of the -1 here. Look at the difference in TTK times. you now jump from a 240 TTK to a 360. And to give you a reference here, the M4's TTK is at normal, or let's just do none because that's what it's calculated at, is 0.257. Look at the difference, 0.60, 0.257. And now let's calculate if you were to miss a shot with the M4. And this is why it's important to understand the calculations. So let's just do M4A1, whatever. The damage is 31.50. The rate of fire is 700. And again, this is very important to note here. The M41, if you miss a shot, first off, that's on you. And second off, the gun has no fucking recoil, like the Scar H does. So the chances of you missing your shot is a lot less likely than it is with the Scar H. So we'll just do the standard calculation first. So we'll take we'll change this to D8, change this to E8, and boom, there's our calculation. You can see, oh, well, the Scar H is going to beat out the M4 by however many seconds. Well, let's say we miss a shot. You can see, oh, wow. Oh, that's why. Okay, I was like, what the fuck? I just proved myself wrong. Look at the difference. You'll still beat the Scar H. And that's why fire rate is important to calculate. It's very, very important to calculate because the slower the fire rate and the higher the damage the gun is, the less you can afford to actually waste a bullet on someone. Same thing with the AK-15. It has a fire rate of 540, which is very similar to the Scar. Do the calculation, you'll figure out that it becomes way worse than the M4A1. And that's why the G36 is just such an amazing gun, and that's why I love it. I tout it as the best, other than the M4, because that extra 50 fire rate, all we have to do is take the same calculations and just change this. So now we'll change it to 750. Look at the difference. It's 320 now. And it's 240. Like, look at the difference. And you're never going to miss a shot with a G36 unless you miss a shot. The Scar H, if we just show this off really quickly, you'll see, and obviously I'm running no attachment, so it's going to be a little bit more biased, but look at that. The fucking recoil is just horrendously bad. And this is just at 50 meters. Now, granted, it doesn't have any attachments, but even with attachments, it's like that. So another really important thing to note here is the aiming speed, the running speed, and the reload time, which people don't really take into account. These stats are also important. Now, if we compare it, so let's say the aim down time with the Scar H is 0.20. Oh, well, we forgot to equip a sight to it. Let's equip a sight really quickly. Do a red dot. Oh, wow, it's actually the same. It's actually faster. Okay, well, I take back everything. The Scar H is now the best weapon in the game. I'm playing. But you can see, like, these stats are important. Like, it takes 0.30 with the AK-15, where the M4 takes 0.26. And I think the G36 even had... No, it's about the same as the M4. 0.25. Okay. So, surprisingly, it actually has a better aim down sight time. And we can compare the running speed. The M4A1 has a little bit better running speed, which isn't too important, but it's definitely a benefit. The reload time, if we include a quick aim mag, which, by the way, makes your recoil even worse, for 20 bullets, 3.33 is quite high. It's quite a high stat. Where the M4 is 3.31. You get an extra 10 bullets with the M4A1, where the Scar H, you only get 20 bullets, and it has an increased time of 2 milliseconds, which again doesn't seem like a lot, but if we compare the the mag capacities, and if you want 30 bullets, well, guess what? It jumps up to 4.76, which is a lot higher than the M4A1. Same thing with the AK-15. It has 6 less bullets and a reload time of 3.93. If we include a quick A, it's 3.28, which only beats the M4 by a couple of milliseconds. You know, having that 6 bullets less is a lot worse. It's much better to have these 6 bullets more than having to reload. And there's actually a guy on YouTube. His name is Paul Harrell, I think his name is. Let me make sure. Yeah, his name's Paul Harrell. And Paul Harrell, even in his videos, he's an expert. He was in the Marine Corps, I believe, and he was a weapons expert. He would train the soldiers, and I believe he was also deployed and all that. And he knows firearms way better than most people do. And even he says it's better to have those extra bullets than not to. And so I believe this is Paul Harrell approved by his own videos, that having that extra 6 bullets definitely worth it than having to reload the entire magazine. And again, the AK-15 doesn't beat out the M4A1 in any significant way, and actually it's worse because of the recoil. And yeah, that's pretty much it. These stats are definitely worth taking into consideration, but I would say from top to bottom, the most important stats are, firstly, TTK, and then you have to support the TTK with, can you actually hit your shots? Because if you can't hit your shots, the TTK isn't reliable because it's predicated upon, are you hitting your shots? Scar H, AK-15, FAL, they all fail this. So that's the statistics side of everything, and that's how you want to think about it when choosing a weapon. Now there's more to it. There's much more to it, actually, that people don't realize. There are some guns, like the Chris Vector, which is really fucking good. The Chris Vector's TTK is phenomenally good. The sight, what's it called? The recoil is also really fucking good for its TTK. But guess what? At 50 meters, your damage starts to drop off, and this is very important to look at down here, this little graph here, the effective range. So yeah, definitely worth looking at the graph down here. And now you can see the Chris Vector beyond 50 meters isn't going to be as effective. So the only real reason why you would use the Chris Vector is because of its TTK, and this gun is useful in very specific scenarios. And I've actually used the Chris Vector, hence why I have 189 kills on it in those specific scenarios. Let's say you're playing on a domination map where you're playing close quarters all the time. There's no point in running the M4A1 or the G36C. Run the Chris Vector for the faster TTK times. But since I'm mostly playing 127v127, the maps are going to be a lot bigger, I'm fighting over longer ranges, I don't have much use for this Chris Vector. But understanding when to use these weapons is very important. And that's why I always recommend to people, just use the M4A1, just use the G36C, because if I were to recommend, well, the Chris Vector is actually really good, it would take a lot longer of a time for me to sit there and explain every single scenario where you should use the Chris Vector than to actually just explain it to you guys so you can make these determinations on your own. And there are a lot of weapons like this. The P90 has the same problem the Vector does, and people are hailing this gun as amazing, and honestly the gun is pretty good. It isn't a bad gun by any means, but again, you look at that, it starts to drop off at 100 meters. It's halved, so it would be 14 damage. And we can hop into the game here. And we can actually shoot this. You can see for the recoil, it's a fucking amazing. But you have to understand its drop-off range, its TTK. So the P90 is actually a really good gun. Sure, the Chris Vector beats out on it, but you have to take everything into account. And this is where we start to get into more theoretical and practice situations. Those extra 50 bullets are very, very helpful. They're insanely helpful. And having the opportunity to have those extra, 20 bullets over the Vector is huge. But here is where the Vector kind of has a one-up, the drum mag. Although the recoil isn't going to be as good as the P90. you can just see the recoil is just really bad, and I'm not really doing a good job of controlling it, but you can really start to see the differences, right? Just for 10 extra bullets, I'm adding such a big tax, and that's why you have to go back and you have to look at TTK time. And we can actually come over here and compare it. So the P90 has 0.300 TTK time against the Chris Vector, which has a 250. And you can start to see the differences here. They're very, very small. And we know for a fact that with the P90, we're going to be hitting our shots. But we also, this is important again, we have to look at the fire rate. Fire rate's 800, where the P90, the Vector is 1200. I can't find the Vector, but I know it's 1200. So the shots we miss on the P90 are going to be a lot more meaningful. But I would pick the P90 over the Vector every time, just simply because with this recoil, I know I'm going to be able to hit all my shots, plus I'm getting 10 extra bullets, and the reload speed on it is fucking insane. So that's why I would say use the P90 over the Vector. Now, to sit there and explain it to people, these type of things, is very, very difficult. And this video already is difficult enough to make. But I definitely want to put it out there. So when I have questions like, well, what do you think about this weapon? What do you think about that weapon? I can link this video. Obviously, I'll try to my best to explain it. But a comment can only do it so much justice. And going in depth into my thought processes and experiences and trying to explain it to you guys will give you a lot clearer insight into why I choose the weapons I choose. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you understood. I know this is a little bit more of a messier and longer video, but I feel like with this information out there, if you are dedicated enough to have made it to this point, I promise you, you're on your way to becoming one of the best Battlebit players in the game. Until next time, I'll see you. Peace.